And welcome everybody to the Wednesday, January 31st, 2024, first Joint Food Ontology Work Group call of the year. This agenda today is to have Barbara Seljak introduce the ComFocus project and the progress so far. There's actually an annual meeting. I get to meet her in person, meet you in person, Barbara, in about a month. So there's a lot to see and talk about there. We'll spend half an hour on that and then maybe more. And then in the remaining time, I would like to just give an update on the ONS Ontology for Nutritional Studies update and upgrade, which I've been working on in the last month. So with that said, I think we can just hand it over to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Damian, for inviting us to this meeting. Hopefully, you can all hear me well. Good morning to those who have just started the day, and good afternoon to our colleagues from Europe. First, let me share the screen. Okay. Hopefully, you can see my presentation.
Yep.
Okay. So what we are presenting today is ontology that is being developed within ComFocus project. This project is a European funded, EU funded project where we are dealing with food consumer science. Namely, this is domain where this kind of work still needs to be done. We all know that in the domains of bioinformatics and nowadays also food and nutrition in general, some work has already been done, while food consumer science is still, let's say, not underrated, but undernourished in this field. So we have decided to collect different data from various studies on food consumer science. We decided to create an ontology and then using this ontology further develop knowledge graphs to be able to do something with this data, which obviously is heterogeneous, is described, classified in different ways. However, if we want to learn something from this data, we need to establish this semantic infrastructure to be able to start learning from linked data. So in EU project ComFocus, we have 2 open calls. These calls are aimed to collect these different data sets. And then it's up to us, to consortium team, to prepare these semantic resources, all tools to be able to link and integrate data to be able to find answers to some challenging research questions. So in our presentation, first we will briefly say a few words about our project. Then we will present the logical framework, which is basis for the development of the ontology. We will also introduce the concept of harmonized measures, because this is something which is used by consumer scientists and we need to adapt to their language. We would like to discuss within your group, within our group, some decisions and open issues around the development of the ontology. Robert will present the current status. And then, yeah, either in between or at the end, we can end this presentation with discussion. The project is Horizon 2020 project. It started in 2021 and it finishes in 2 years. The scientific coordinator is Professor Hans van Trijp for Wageningen University. And we have 2 work packages aimed for our work. In work package 5, we are developing the ontology, and then in work package 7, we are developing all kinds of tools, including recommender system based on the ontology developed in work package 5. And we want to prove the concept using these data sets coming from 2 open calls. So this is briefly about the project. And then if we continue with the logical framework, this is, let's say, a mission statement, which was defined by consumer scientists. They say that they really want to describe everything around individuals, which usually have some feelings, some expressions about a target. Obviously in some context, in ambient and target context. So I will give you an example of a study, of a consumer science study. For instance, they want to verify an effect of ambient on consumer choice of food. For instance, if we are listening some nice music, will this affect on the choice of, I don't know, healthy or less healthy food item? So in this case, individual is consumer, expression is food choice, target is food item, and context is ambient. It can be temperature, music, whatever. It's really up to the researcher to decide what's his or her research interest. So considering this logical framework, we need to conceptualize all these basic parts of the mission statement. Individual, obviously, humans, we are defined with different features, characteristics, and these need to be described in the ontology or conceptualized. Then we have expression. A lot of work has been done in last 2 years in ComFocus to define harmonized measures which describe expression. Then target can be either food items, food system in general, or any other issues around that. And context can be ambient, like presented in the example, or can be context around food product. I mean, it sounds simple. However, because we need to deal with humans, which have really many attributes which need to be taken into consideration from health, from behavior, from body function, socio-demographics. I mean, there are so many aspects that need to be considered, that although these graphs seem to be simple, when we start, defining all these axioms, I mean, it's really a challenging task. Luckily, there already exist some ontologies that could be reused. However, if we want to follow descriptions, definitions provided within ComFocus project, then in our team, which works around this ComFocus ontology, we never know what to decide. So we will appreciate also your suggestions on this issue. Target, I believe this is also important, especially within this working group, because it's so tightly connected to foods. I mean, target can be also other parts, but let's focus on food because you are expert on food, on ontology. Here in ComFocus, in logical framework, food is not described so from the biological point of view, but more from other aspects which are related to behavior of humans, of consumers. So some parts can be reused from food on or other ontologies, but some parts still need to be either refined within food on or described within ComFocus project. So this is another aspect. Here, yeah, I just want to visualize how the study, which I'm giving as an example, where we want to verify the effect of ambient on consumer choice of food. We treat food as an item, for instance, cake. And then beside all these descriptions, definitions of food, we also need to consider, for instance, nutritional aspect of food. We need to be able to describe all kinds of rating systems, which nowadays are used either in Europe or other parts of the globe. I know that, I mean, here I'm giving the example of Nutri-Score because this is actually a system linked to this study. However, at this moment, there is still a big discussion around this Nutri-Score, whether shall be used in general or not, how shall be defined. Definition has just recently been changed, and this change obviously needs to be reflected also in semantic resources. So ontology, first, our task is to conceptualize these harmonized measures, because this is something which has been defined in the project, and this is also the main concern of the management team in the project. Then we, I mean, as researchers coming from computer science field, we also believe that it's not enough to conceptualize only measures which has been defined within one project, but we need to enable also normalization of data provided from other sources. For instance, we have many non-structured data, we have literature where it's a lot of knowledge, and we should be able to consider entities coming from non-structured data also in the ontology. And then, yeah, we shouldn't forget about other domains which are so close to food nowadays and food choice, like health, environment, that everything needs to be defined in such a way that we can how to say, fit into this larger scale. So here I'm mentioning a tool, namely, you know, we really want to support researchers not only by providing an ontology, but we also want to help them with the annotation of data, because now we already see data coming from OpenCall. I mean, they really carry important information. However, data are not annotated in a way that would be useful for any further automatic processing. So this kind of tool, FoodWiz, which has been developed also in other European projects. It's a really nice tool where we can add semantic resources, and then this tool can be used first for automatic information extraction, in this case from non-structured data, but then also to provide integrated linking to semantic resources which are integrated into this tool. So this is something which we are also developing in this project because we believe this is something which researchers will need in the near future. So yeah, here are some issues which serve, let's say, as decisions or rules taken by our group, and we are happy to discuss them also with you. Namely, we decided to follow standards and guidelines like rules coming from OBO Foundry, Dublin Core. We are aware of engineering approach presented by most probably a member of your group, Michael Gruninger. Then we would like to follow, and we are actually already following, top-level approach and then mid-level ontologies, because our ontology is, let's say, some kind of low-level application ontology which needs to feed into, as I said, larger scale. Then we are aware of food on and also on ontology, also ONS ontology, ontology for nutritional studies, because in one of our recently finished projects, FNS Cloud, we developed FNS Harmony ontology, which actually is an extension of ONS ontology. This has been done in collaboration with our colleagues from University of Florence and together with our colleague Panche from our institute. So if there is any interest in this ontology, maybe in one of next meetings, this ontology could also be presented and discussed if you believe that this is of your interest. And then, as I mentioned before, all the time we have these dilemmas, whether we should reuse something or whether we should follow descriptions defined within our project. We are, at this moment, we are using Protégé. However, we are aware also of other tools because I really need to mention a team working with Robert. They have developed a really nice tool which can be used to design a survey, specifying all these harmonized measures, I mean questions and then answers organized in such a way. And they have already incorporated all these harmonized measures, already defined all of them. So our final goal is, once ConFocus ontology is stable enough, we will just simply import these harmonized measures from their tool into the ontology so that both tools are aligned. FNS Harmony, yeah, I mean, here we used this modular approach. We have specified several modules, one around microbiome, then another on food components, bioactives, then dietary interventions, and also there is a module on branded foods following GS1 standardization, which we believe is also important and can be very useful also in ConFocus. And then, yeah, I think maybe I can now give the floor to Robert. Here, yeah, it's just a brief structure of ConFocus modules. First, we need to define survey components because surveys, in food consumer science are not the same as, you know, surveys or studies in different food-related domains, because it's so related to human behavior. So maybe we can reuse some parts from other ontologies around surveys, but for sure some specific parts will need to be specified also by ourselves. And then we have these modules around individual expression, target, and context. So yeah, now Robert, if you want to present our current status, maybe, yeah. Sorry, I really forgot to say at the very beginning of my talk, in our group working on this ontology, we collaborate with Wageningen Research Institute, represented by Robert, and yeah, I'm presenting Josef Stefan Institute, Slovenia. So I'm sorry. So yeah, Robert, please go on.
Yeah, perfect. I will. Does anyone have any questions for Barbara before I start? Otherwise, I'll zoom into the tools that we're using. Okay, yeah, now I can start sharing my screen, or should be able to. Let's see. Let's go to this one. So can you see my screen? Yeah, great. So let's start at the beginning. First, I will introduce myself. Let's start with that. So my name is Robert Hobbelmond. I work for Wageningen Economic Research in the Data Science and Innovation Group. In my department, I'm product manager and product owner of a couple of tools that we develop. One of them is actually the tool we're looking at right now, which we further developed in the ComFocus project. And the ComFocus project, as Barbara has already introduced, has as its aim to develop a starting community for food consumer science, and wants to increase the machine readability of data that is generated in the domain. There's only one problem. The data currently generated by researchers is not very well standardized. So the way concepts are measured are not that well harmonized between different research groups and researchers, and therefore it's quite hard also to realize this machine readability. To improve that, we have developed a tool that helps the consumers in our project, because we have an open call in which many proposals have been sent in which data is being collected, and they actually use our tooling. And to support them in that process, we have developed a tool which contains a library of harmonized measures. And you can then see a harmonized measure, look at it as just a standardized piece of questionnaire that you can incorporate in your questionnaire. And by searching and finding the right questionnaire components, you can just by simply clicking your questionnaire, by clicking creating your questionnaire, and then you can export it to in any format. One of them is the QSF file, which can be used in the Qualtrics application, which is quite widely adopted among it's a commercial tool, but it's quite widely adopted in this community. Therefore, we created that. So this project has a couple of work packages, and one of the work packages actually, in that work package, the domain experts work together to select the best practices for measuring specific concepts and creating these harmonized pieces of questionnaire. And then we add them to the library. So what we're looking now at now is that library. We can search through it. For example, if I want to look for food neophobia, then I can find that measure, and I can. There is some provenance metadata, theoretical background, target, concept name, things like that, definitions. And I can also dive into the details, and then I get this question. It's actually only one question. To what extent do you agree with the following statements? And then we have a couple of statements that we see here. I'm constantly sampling new and different foods. I don't trust new foods, etc. And there's also an agreement scale linked to it. So the users or the respondents to the questionnaire, they can score each statement on a scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. So that's the way that it works. This is the type of question we're looking at is a matrix question, and yeah, this is very often used, this method, by the consumer researchers. So similar to this one, we have all these different harmonized measures listed, and these will also provide the core of our ontology, or at least the first, our start with building the ontology, because these are the standardized components that we will base ourselves upon. And that will also be the basis of the data sets that will be generated. Because the process is follows, you can create your questionnaire in this tool, then export it, for example, to Qualtrics, gather your data there, then you'll have your data file, and then you can upload it again to the tool. And that data will also be stored, can be stored in a structured way. And then all the metadata connected to your questionnaire, we have that available. And this ensures that we are able to actually understand each column in the data sets, and also link it to the proper concepts. So it's a way of automatic annotation that we're trying to establish. Okay, so this is actually the source for the primary source for our ontology, and I just want to zoom in on a specific example. I've already pre-selected it because I've always find it a bit difficult to browse through an ontology in a tool such as Protégé. Maybe you have some best practices how to do it a bit better than what I'm doing now. But let's focus on this one. So we have this matrix question. So I've dived into the question, which is which of the following emotions apply? And this is a type of matrix question. And actually, a matrix question, the way we have modeled it now, I'm very curious to your opinion, is that this question has two classifications linked with two different relations. So the first is has items from classification, FEM feelings, and is answered by yes, no. And maybe it would be nice if I would also be able to show how it's represented in the tool. Go to the exact same evoked emotions. Evoked emotions, that's the concept. Oh, yeah. This is what it looks like in the tool. So, oh, no, this is actually the other one. Sorry. I'm going back. This one. Sorry. So this is the matrix question. Which of the following emotions apply? We have this list of emotions, and then we have the yes, no over there. And in the ontology, this is how we did it. So has items from classification, and then we have a classification with all these feelings as instances. And then we have another classification, and the relation is answered by, and then yes, no as instances to that classification. So that will be my first question. What do you think of that approach? Does anyone have an opinion on that?
Off the top of my head, so is answered by then gives you the flexibility to say a Likert scale, or some other way of measuring a free text, I presume.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
Oh, no other comments right off the bat. It's just great that you are implementing a whole survey engine. Um, and I had made a comment earlier that it would be great to see that as a standalone product, separate from any particular food semantics,
Yeah,
since it's so general purpose.
yeah, definitely.
All right,
Yes.
Naomi has her hand. When you're speaking, perhaps just a one or two line introduction, since we have a lot of new people now in the group.
Okay. I perhaps should let Kyle speak first since I see his hand is up too. But in tandem, I'm Naomi Fukugawa, who's director of the USDA Beltsville Human Nutrition Research Center. That's responsible for the USDA Food Data Central data system. And what you're presenting, both of you actually are presenting, are really things that we've been struggling with respect to our data system and trying to implement an ontology that would help across the ag, food system, consumer users, as well as researchers. And so one of the questions, I just had a simple question with respect to survey and the survey tool that you have. Were you conceiving this as a survey tool that researchers could utilize in terms of formulating their questions, such that when results are obtained after the survey is conducted, that at least the replies would be in a standardized format?
Yes.
That's what
Yeah.
your intent is. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And then the researcher that creates the questionnaire can create a questionnaire from the library based on standardized questions.
Right.
And add custom questions to it.
So have you ventured into the side of food intake surveys, you know, in terms of
not so
population?
much, but there is something in the library, like the food frequency questionnaire.
Right.
We have implemented that one, so it's available in the library.
Okay.
But we haven't linked it to food intake tooling, for example, because it's a bit different type of questionnaire than the ones that we're using within the project for now.
Right.
But I can imagine that there's a link there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'll let others ask questions, but very interesting. Thank you.
Over to you, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle McKillop. I'm underneath Naomi at the Beltsville Human Nutrition Research Center and the lead on Food Data Central. Just second a lot of what she said there as far as our struggles. And I think this work really helps, I think, integrate multiple systems and make sure we're using the same language. My question was also going to be related about food intake and sort of questions about in that side, knowing that you use the food frequency questionnaire, if there were any thoughts about using some of the other popular survey software like AMPM or ASA24 and making sure those are also, in a way where those questions can be asked through this sort of ontology or generated through this as well.
So currently, we are not planning on doing that, but we're always open for new projects. So. Yeah.
I might say that if the ComFocus survey engine is outputting a certain format, then it's not a big jump to imagine converting that to a particular survey engine's requirements.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Laurette Dubé, you're next.
Hello, yeah, Laurette Dubé, very much involved on both sides of the Atlantic. And Naomi, I'm glad to see you here. If you remember, you were on our panel of one of our FCI meetings not that long ago. And I'm also on the International Advisory Board of ComFocus. And I completely would like to build up of what you said, what Kyle said, and what Robert has been saying also. within the context that on this side of the Atlantic, more of the work have been done on food and nutrition, whereas on the other side, you get ComFocus, you get Suzanne Mickey, who is also a group very much part of this ontology network, and there it's more about the human behavior aspects. And I think that if we can really build a real synergy between what is done on both sides, there is a whole next level that can be reached in terms of finding a way to connect all those knowledge in a tractable manner that can be anchored and accelerate solution. That was my commentary. I don't know, Robert, if you want to add to this, or Damien, or whoever.
I completely agree. So yeah, I'm very happy to see that today we are here, and Damien is also coming to our ComFocus meeting. So that's probably also the start of collaboration in this field. And yeah, looking forward to continue on that path.
And along that path, Damian is not coming with me in Vaganagan, but I will be the week after Slovenia. I'll be in Vaganagan, and there is a whole Digital Europe upcoming programs that Jacques Wolfert from your institute, who has been a collaborator, not on the behavioral, but on the other one, does want to kind of move to a next level of portfolio of projects. So I think it can be very interesting moving forward.
Kyle.
I just had a thought or comment on that, because part of that question was linking in with food on in these ComFocus work is especially when thinking again about food intake. Food on, correct me if I'm wrong, Damien, but really is focused on this sort of single commodity approach. Is there a limitation currently when it gets into these mixed dishes, these cultural dishes, in naming and understanding the nutrients of those dishes, specifically the ingredients of those dishes?
So I might broaden that question. These food surveys, for example, are asking people what kind of food they eat. Would food on be able to capture your language there? Is it about diet in general? Is it at what level of granularity does it carry down to? And how does it deal with multi-component foods in the whole commercial sphere, which have ingredient lists and so on? Are you asking these can you use your tool as a dietary survey where people are trying to describe exactly what they eat? Or is your tool kind of flying in at the level of asking about their dietary patterns and not naming lasagna in particular, ethnic foods? So that's sort of beaming it at you, but to catch that ball, Kyle. Indeed, Foodon is pivoting to trying to be super comprehensive, to be the lingua franca of single ingredient foods, and maybe and the processes that might have been used and applied to them, so you can kind of capture that level of nutritional modeling. But then the multi-component foods is a gigantic universe that is as multitudinous as these 1 million recipe databases, and so we are staying away from both branded foods, naming them directly somehow as a class or an instance in Foodon, and but what we do in terms of the general food description is we import ONS, Ontology for Nutritional Studies, around the dietary patterns and diet. And that's one thing I'll try to finish this morning's hour on. Over to you, Barbara.
Yeah, I actually wanted to say that within FNS Cloud project, where this FNS Harmony ontology was developed, we tried to address also branded foods and also concepts around not only food intake, but also microbiome. I see, or I saw that Duccio is with us. Yeah, hi Duccio. Maybe if you want, you can add something on that, because I think that all this work is somehow, you know, interlinked, or it should be interlinked. So yeah, Duccio.
No, I agree. In fact, it's an ongoing collaboration also with Damien. I think one of the strong points that we should foster, it's really the multidisciplinary approach that we can achieve, including persons that, you know, have access to different languages. I'm talking about different languages. I mean, you know, come from the nutrition, microbiology, and computer science. I mean, it's really something we should keep as unique and try to create, in my opinion, training programs on that. And I think the power of the approach was showcased in this FNS Cloud European Consortia, where we started approaching the definition of fermented foods, let's say. I mean, we worked on 3 of them: Parmesan, kefir, and you know, fresh cheeses or stuff like that, integrating different layers of ontologies and basically trying to find the gaps. And it means what is not explained. And there are some conditional links that might be relevant for the application of these concepts to the real world, like in the analysis of or like into the annotation of data coming from the community that's working on the microbiome. And it's already, you know, the linking of the attaching a component term that indicates the origin of, let's say, of a given metabolite, you know. So that is, CABI is agnostic in this respect. So CABI just defines chemical compounds. It doesn't tell you anything on where it comes from, where the process is deriving, while people working in the microbiome fields is claiming that a certain pathway or a certain set of genes leads to that compound, and it's only of microbial origin. So being able to use ontologies at the link between the layers might enable to better define the roles of the actors into the process. And so passing from a static view of a food ingredient, you know, to a dynamic view of a food ingredient, trying to integrate the different layers of complexity into that. And I think it's exactly where this community really plays an important role, because we should try to bring the ontologies into the data domain, trying to, you know, maybe to see how we can actually use real data that is being produced by different communities to see whether we can really cover completely and properly the annotations of what they're defining. I mean, Daniel knows that one of the things that we were very picky about and we started working on was the definition of westernized diets. You know, it's funny, but a lot of people that works in the field of human nutrition in face of microbiome has accepted the term of westernized diet. And this term is actually a nonsense, because there's nothing like westernized diet. It's really not there, but they use it all the way, and they publish on Nature all the time. So, I mean, and we made proposals that were like traditional diets, as you've been trying to define some traditional foods, and why they're traditional, because you attach to the terms the fact that they are part of a culture, so they have a culture, you know, origin. And then more than westernized is maybe better globalized, because in the diet of the globalized world, it's basically adds an ontological terms that is processed foods. So a diet that is based on processed foods rather than fresh foods, it's a westernized diet. Rather than a diet that's based on fresh foods or traditional foods, it's I would say what they call a non-westernized diet. So I think we have a lot to say, and we should get more involved into this interface between the different ontologies. And there is a link, a very strong link with different layers, like with the gene ontology, with the KEBI. And you know what we've tried to do with the ontology for nutrition and science is exactly to be at the interface and trying to address the issues that come from touching base on different levels of ontologies. And actually, Barbara and Pancha have been very active in this process, and now Damien is also extremely good at helping us to doing the right things and trying to resolve some of the issues that came and actually are appearing on ONS.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That sounds like a good...
And we, yeah, no, and collaborations are welcome. So I'm saying this is really a working group, and we should sort of try to extend it as much as possible. So thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Dan. And sorry for being late. I arrived 20 minutes late, but it was just because of Florence traffic. Because I was moving from the lab to home, and instead of the usual 10 minutes, it took me 35 minutes. I was like, yeah, crazy.
Okay. Yeah, well, Ducci, I'm all in there. The way we control this permutation bomb of complexity of terms and relationships is by trying to lasso chunks of them into domains that each curation team can handle. And yet this requires so much more explicit acknowledgement that there has to be dialogue between the groups. And it's really an educational as well as a technological commitment to synchronize. Okay, Naomi, over to you.
By the way, that last announcement, I mean, this might look funny, but I want you to know that I am teaching a course in a new program that we have at the University of Florence. It's a big data program that integrates computational scientists with mathematicians, statisticians, and a few biologists. And the course is called The Language of the Living. So I'm trying, to address exactly the annotation and definition of concepts used in biology and making them understandable for a computational person, for someone that comes from computer science, mathematics, and I think it would be very interesting to start thinking about this as an important field of development. I mean, this is my first year, so I'm starting the course right now. There is not a book, so it doesn't exist anything. So any contribution that can come from the ontology community for building this could be very relevant. And I think, given what's happening in the field of artificial intelligence and the importance of properly defining words, I think this is going to be a very challenging but interesting effort. So if anyone is interested and can contribute ideas, slides, or thoughts is welcome. And I hope that Damien will be in Florence teaching one of the classes after Ljubljana.
Yep. Great. So before I hand it to you, Naomi, I'll close out with a little bit of an ONS update and show a little bit of transform there. But over to you, Naomi.
Oh, sorry, I'm not sure if Kyle was going to say what I am going to say, but I sort of definitely resonate with what Duccio just said in terms of the terminologies of what is a good or a bad diet or what's Western. So given that the US tends to be US centric, by Western, they are claiming that dietary pattern that has created a significant number of non-communicable disease or associated with non-communicable diseases in the US and thought to be, the culprit because of the combinations that's there. And so the ideal dietary pattern, at least it seems to come out to be closer to the Mediterranean diet. But in terms of the actual types of studies and interventions that are conducted, especially in humans, nutritionists, unfortunately, tweak what they mean when they create the diet that they try to test. So your Mediterranean diet may not be the same Mediterranean diet that was studied in a particular research protocol. And that's the struggle we have, because most of the relationships between dietary patterns or specific components in food are all associations. And it's very, very difficult with lifelong exposures to food. Unlike drugs, you have no choice but to eat. So therefore, it's very difficult to dissect out a single nutrient or a single component to be responsible for whatever ills or whatever positive benefits there might be. And therein, I think, is the reason why we hopefully will all work towards a little more integrative thought about how do we approach doing this type of research rather than continuing on our, single nutrient, single food associations with a biological outcome, because all of us differ in terms of how we're going to respond. So I don't know if ontology could help us with all of this, but it might be able to help us with respect to dissecting the dilemmas we have with, understanding the information in the literature. So that's long-winded, but thank you very much.
All right. Kyle, and then Duccio.
Yeah, what I was going to say is definitely on the collaboration part and making sure we're communicating and we're not doing things in silos. And then the day we come together, we have different definitions for the same terms. Barbara, I was just looking at the FNS harmony aspects here, and I think a key aspect here was talking about, the microbes, the fermented foods, and then you have these GS1 terms and codes. We've worked with GS1 through the branded partnership we have with the USDA and the partners that we have in the branded partnership to work on adding microbes as a module of the GPC so that information can be captured. So knowing, and it's probably being designed on sort of a US focused sort of naming scheme and working with GDSN to add this to the GPC or add this to, the GDSN schema. But I think maybe collaborating and integrating this is a more proper way of making sure that that's going to capture your needs as well.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, thank you for not comment, but yeah, your thinking. We are more than happy to continue working in this field. So as I said before, maybe we can devote one of such meetings for FNS Harmony to discuss it. But Damian, it's really up to you to decide on this.
Yeah.
Lucia, probably you would like to comment as well.
No, that sounds good. It's right on target.
No, I wanted to comment and then just a brief final comment to Naomi. It's with which I could not agree most, also because if you try to define a Mediterranean diet based on the number of ingredients, not only you go crazy, but you realize that there are as many descriptions of Mediterranean diet. Every study has somehow, they have some general terms that are so generic, it's really hard to get down and use a combination of ontological terms to define it properly. But last but not the least, just a second. Mamma, sono in una videoconferenza, va bene? Ciao, ciao. No, last but not least, the example that Naomi was making, it's perfectly exemplified by one of the components of Mediterranean diet, that is resveratrol, that is found in red wine and in several other components. And if you look at the resveratrol, it's annotated amongst the antioxidants, because that's the way in which it was originally designed. But then you go and look at the data on resveratrol, it is not an antioxidant. So it should not belong in KEBI, this class of molecules, but actually it's a mild pro-oxidant whose antioxidant effect is mediated by the fact that you activate hormetic mechanisms into the human body and in the plant as well, or in the yeast as well. So this is an example of the complexity that we are facing and how problematic is the use of right terms for the right things. So I would really like to take a couple of these examples and trying to address a couple of these very well-known paradigms from a linguistic point of view, from the use of terms in the language and how the data that belongs to that is currently annotated. Because to tell you how this can be misleading, if you use if you link resveratrol to antioxidants and then you use some of the genes that are associated to the response to the resveratrol to an antioxidant response and use it for queries using any type of methods, then you can come up with fake results because they link elements to the wrong concepts. And I think this is really, we should do an exercise, take one or two of these things and try to dissect them properly from a linguistic perspective and from an ontological perspective, adding to the fact of and seeing how many contradictions can raise when you go and use it for mining, using wrong terms for queries or wrong concepts in the queries. But I totally agree that I think it's a fundamental step in nutrition. I mean, really, I think that nutrition is booming and it's so important in this moment to work on this aspect, to do things properly, because otherwise everybody talks about big data, everybody talks fair data, but we're not going to find anything relevant if we start from the wrong usage of terms. So thank you so much, Danny.
And so Barbara and Robert, now exposed to this hardcore food nutrition community, we're going to be muscling in to try to get more versions of Mediterranean diet, with and without wine and red wine and on your survey standards here. Because we're so keen to reach those consumers of yours and understand their behavior too. Okay, well, I'm just going to take a few minutes then. I knew your presentation would engender so much interest and dialogue. I'll just take a couple of minutes here to talk about the ONS stuff. And actually, I will transform a little bit of the talk I was going to do in dialogue and into just a communication out. Because I think what I'd like to see happen is that we have a set of competency questions developed for ONS, and that will stake out what its domain is in terms of the vocabulary term around diets and dietary pattern and so on. So here goes, very quick. And share whole screen. And yeah, so just to say that the ONS update is a project that's just in its very first phase, which is that I get to take a whack at it and bring it up to OBO Foundry standards. And that involves really taking a close look at all the different kinds of terms that have been imported into it in the spirit of the OBO Foundry of sharing of ontology terms, reusing of ontology terms. So there's a chunk of work around that, but we had a few objectives around this revision, this update, to try to steer what the objective of ONS is, how to keep it satisfying a wider academic research community, but also very much meeting the needs of existing projects. Duccio and Francesco are going to do a one-page write-up on their learnings about the diet versus dietary pattern concept. Basically, there's a real need here to figure out how to harmonize or consolidate these two branches, diet and dietary patterns. So I think what I'll do is I'll send out a one-page email that will solicit some of your opinions on the difference, use and language of the word diet versus dietary pattern, so that we can crack that one last piece that really needs a bit of revision in ONS. So anyway, there's a bunch of notes about all the changes on this, and I'll just present that later once more changes happened, or maybe Duccio will. But suffice to say, the transformation of ONS sort of goes from like the first creation of the ontology, where we're trying to identify all of these terms from OboFoundry that need to be components in the examples that Duccio mentioned around fermentation. But we're doing this initial round within the context of BFO, the basic formal ontology, and this wider range of ontologies, not all of which have actually positioned themselves under the BFO structure. So that's why ONS currently looks fairly broad at the top level, with all of these terms that have been imported and not necessarily organized underneath the BFO entity hierarchy, which has all of its little rules and regulations about term placement. So as you're browsing the current version of ONS, you'll see a lot of terms that are in black, indicating that they're native to ONS, the main file, as opposed to an imported term. And you occasionally see what ONS has done directly when an ONS ID shows up for the term, but then there are all of these other terms that have also been integrated and commented on and placed within ONS. So that's the current version. What we're looking at in the new version also represents a bit of a sea change in OboFoundry, where there is no necessary commitment to BFO at the top level in an OboFoundry ontology, but they are moving to the idea that you would commit to at least the this COB, Common Ontology for Biology hierarchy. And it is a bit of a flatter hierarchy. In fact, it reuses BFO terms at its level. But here we introduce ONS and other ontologies that are using this model with the characteristic branch, immaterial entities, information content entities, material entities, and processes, and that's it. So that's just a sneak peek of what is happening with ONS. And I can say under information content entity, the main question that I'll send out is about these branches, diet and dietary pattern. Anyway, so we're over by 5 minutes, so it's time to wrap this up. But in a nutshell, that's what's going on. And hopefully within the next month, month and a half, maybe the workshop in Florence, we can do some further work on the question. So any feedback on that quickly before we shut down? Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Barbara and Robert. That was really great. And obviously, we need to have you all back. Again, look forward to that with the FNS Cloud.
Thanks a lot for giving us the
Looking
opportunity to
forward
present the work.
to
Okay.
meeting you soon. Yeah. Okay.
Ciao a tutti.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Great. And I put something in for Rob
Right.
Warren in chat. I want to
Right.
make sure he captures that. He can
Yeah.
reach out to me.
I will send it out. Is that Rob Warren?
Thank you, Kyle.
Oh, there you
Yeah,
are.
Kyle will take this to email. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then as to Kyle, Rob is asking Kyle about Food Data Central and GS1. Yeah, right. Gotcha. Okay. Good. Well, thanks, guys.
Great.
Talk to you soon.
Cool. Take care,
Talk
guys.
to you soon.